Gotcha. Awesome. There we go. Perfect. All right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Uh, good. Good.
Good. Yeah.
Bit tired, but yeah. perfect.
Nice. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Yeah, no, it's yeah. Mhm.
Javier, do you want to start or should I?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Like,
Yeah, for me it was like a bit weird, just because like I've done a couple of different kind of creative jobs before Frontier, and a couple of different studios. So I don't know which one in this case I would consider my first industry job. Would it be Frontier or would it be the studios before that? And the studios before that, it was definitely exciting because like you get, you're like a student and you get paid for the stuff you want to do. So it's quite exciting, and you always have that feeling in the beginning that you're kind of not at the right place, or you're nervous, anxious, like the imposter syndrome is kind of
mm,
strong always in the beginning. But then, like when I joined Frontier, I was well, in the beginning I was also quite nervous because the difference between a small studio and a big studio is that usually the big studios are a lot more organized. So stuff was a bit different and on a very large scale, I would say. But there's always this feeling in the beginning that you're kind of not gonna be good enough, or the imposter syndrome is kind of telling you that you shouldn't be there. But once you start the job, it's definitely a lot better than before that, I would say.
Mm.
mhm.
They usually, like when you're building your portfolio, you have to put a lot of skill and time into your portfolio, and then you have to interview, and the bar to get your first job is very high. But once you start the job, when you're, let's say, when you're a junior, nobody's gonna expect you to make the whole project by yourself. Like you're gonna be given a lot of small tedious stuff, while the more grown-up artists kind of gonna handle the more complicated stuff. So nobody will expect you to know everything from the beginning. So you shouldn't be kind of concerned for that, I would say.
Yeah, I think that one of the first main things or worries that comes out when you are going to your first job is, will I be able to do everything they ask me? And I think that many people have this question in their head, and therefore they just think about it like, I'm not gonna be able to do those things. But I think that, as Nick say, they will never give you something you're not capable of doing. I don't know what's your take on this, Javier.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I was also extremely nervous. I can definitely relate with those with those feelings that you were mentioning at the beginning from the student that you have. Yeah, for me, my first job at games, like in games, sorry, was tremendously nerve-wracking, but not because not because of external factors, not because of the studio being pushy or anything like this. It was more of my imposter syndrome. Like, I think this is something extremely common for everybody that gets into the industry, especially with your first job, because you have a lot of, I would say, like, holes to cover in your knowledge. You don't know what you will be doing. You don't know if what they taught you or what you learned by yourself, if that's good enough. Yes, you made it through the interviewing process and you might have gotten like a good portfolio, but what you know, is it really that valid? Those were like the thoughts that I had in my head by the time, and I remember how um, those were really nerve wracking for me. And I remember that quickly, very quickly, they turned into, especially that part. I think this is something that not sure if Nikki said this. Um, when you don't know what you will be doing, um, that was the greatest insecurity at first, but then later it turned into the best thing ever, because I realized that if I allowed myself to have fun, then every day was going to be like a new experience. And, one week I'll be doing rocks, the next week I'll be doing vegetation, and the next week I'll be doing like a hard surface asset or whatever.
Hmm.
And I remember that that's actually what made me fall in love with working in games, was like, as an artist, sometimes, especially with props, and especially in outsourcing studios, which was my first were my first experience. I remember how that lack of knowledge of what I was going to do next week or even tomorrow, um, it just made me be very, very happy about having that work. So, um, at first, it's normal to be insecure, but then you can turn that around and actually make it a good thing, because when you don't know something, as you should, being a junior, you should not know everything. If you know everything, everything becomes really boring. So when you don't know everything, that means you have stuff to learn, and if the workspace challenges you to learn more, that's actually a really, really good thing. Shouldn't be an insecurity.
Yeah, but I think that
And
yeah, go ahead, Nick.
yeah. I was gonna say that now that when I'm kind of part of the interviewing process at Frontier, and when we're kind of interviewing people, we're looking a lot at their portfolios. But when we decide to give them an interview, we poke around experiences and what they've done before, just so we can kind of know what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with, because we kind of know what job they're gonna have when we give them the job. We immediately know if that person is capable of doing it or not. And if that person is not capable of doing that job, we're not going to give him the job. So if you pass the interview process, that means that you're basically going to be good enough to do the job. And as we said, as a junior, nobody's going to expect you to be perfect. So if you get the job and you start working, stuff's just going to work out quite nicely. So if a chance is given to you, you have to take it. There is also this other conception where, so in very small studios, like in indie studios and stuff like that, when I've worked in the beginning, when you get the job and you start working, and then you realize a lot of people don't really know what they're doing, and if there isn't anybody above you to tell you what to do or how to do it, and that means that you're probably not in the right place, and that place is going to be uh, kind of a cause for concern, I would say. When you start in a big studio, you're always going to have people that are a lot smarter than you, or a lot higher, and people to look up to, and you always need those people to grow. Otherwise, uh, it's a bit pointless. So you always should strive to be in a place where everybody's a lot smarter than you, I would say.
It's
So
always scary to be in one of those positions.
it is scary. So I'm having some messages that the audio is a little bit low. Guys, can you tell me if it is overall audio or if it is someone special? Like if it is one of the three of us, or is it all of us together?
I have the audio.
Yes, but I do see this, like the audio is too low.
So I can hear you in the stream, like I have it on the other screen. It's good. It I think your screen recording, so Streamlabs or whatever you have there, the audio you're capturing for YouTube, so the screen audio might be a little bit low. The desktop audio, I don't know how it's called.
I have it on maximum. Wait.
Are our streams
Also Javier.
Like if you right click on my user.
Yeah, I have both of you. I have both of you 200. 200.
200.
Yeah, you're already pump up.
And is the, let's see. The audio, like if you go to the volume mixer, is Discord also at 100% the volume?
Yes. Oh, wait. Give me 2 seconds.
Yep.
Can you guys now hear them better? You were to mix.
Hello. My test.
Hi, buenas. But do you hear them better, guys, now? Oh, yeah, the music. Sorry, my bad. The music on the YouTube video was bothering me, so I lowered, my headphones volume, and I forgot I was capturing your sound from there. So slightly louder. Okay, I'm gonna go too lower. There we go. I'm sorry, guys. There we go.
Awesome.
Okay, and now, come on, don't do that. The image that, oh, there we go. So the image cuts if I go to another screen. That's great. Okay, so following up, I'm sorry I interrupted the conversation. It was really nice, the one that we are having. So, the feeling of getting your first job, I think is something really nice. And to be honest, it's like the best feeling, getting that email saying, hey, congratulations, we have chosen you to join us in the studio and everything. And of course, this shows up a lot of emotions besides being happy and so on. But I do think that it's different in different situations. And being the three of us here, we have different experiences on what it is like to have my first date as a professional artist in the industry. Because I've seen that many people talk about this, and I mean, not that they talk about this, but they talk between each other, mostly in Discord communities, but not very public. And it's really different having a first job in a AAA studio like you guys had, or as an outsourcing studio as I had, where I never got the chance to be in studio, in an office. I got to join the industry while it was on pandemic, so I had to do everything from home. And now I'm just outsourcing to other studios from my home as well. So what was for you, that first experience, that first game job you got inside? And in your case, Nick, if you consider like your actual job, your let's say original first game job, you can take that as well.
I can't hear Niki.
Yeah, we can't hear you, man. Sorry.
No audio yet.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, good.
Okay. So I would say, as I said, everyone's experience is a bit different. So everyone is going to be having different experiences overall. So I joined Frontier during the pandemic as well. So I moved to the UK, and the pandemic hit, and I started working from home. And I lived in the UK for like 2 years, and maybe the total time I spent in the office is like 2 weeks, something like that. So I've been working from home for the last maybe 7 years or something like that, and maybe just 2 weeks of those I spent in an office. But to be honest, I quite prefer it to work from home just because I have all my setup the way I like it. I feel comfortable. For the most part, I can work whenever I feel like I'm productive and not all the time. So when I'm productive, I can do my job a lot quicker, and when I'm not productive, there's nobody to micromanage me for that, which is really flexible, allows me to have like a good balance working. Well, I do acknowledge that working from home is not for everyone, but do I do prefer it, to be honest. And then, like, after I spent like 2 years in the UK, they let me move back home here in Bulgaria. So I find that working and living here has given me like a nice work-life balance, which I appreciate a lot more than anything else, to be honest, at this point. And yeah, in terms of like the feeling for the first game and stuff. So my first game I worked at Frontier was like Jurassic World Evolution 2, and working like on a big franchise, working like with a movie studio, and having like these big actors come in and give us like the voice performances and motion captures and everything else was just definitely something different. Like you have like 500, 600 people involved in one project, and like everything's moving together. Sometimes it can be chaotic, other times not. But like when the first time when I saw the game out was like I think a very special moment, and it was very fun because I went to London for a couple of days, and I'm walking past buses, and I have the game on the bus, and then I'm going to the underground, and I'm seeing like everywhere like posters of the game. So like that's definitely like something special because you put so much work in and you put it into the world, and people are now seeing it and enjoying it, and it's definitely something special, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, like, this is kind of a side story of me. When I was in 2014, 2015, I was 14, 15 years old, and I was a huge fan of League of Legends. I was playing like every single day, no jokes around, and I was I was always watching the World Cup, you know, the tournament in the different regions, and I always, at that moment, I always wanted to work at Riot Games, just out from that place, because I always seemed like I had Riot Games had in that at that moment they have kind of like, I think it's still online. It's kind of a showcase of their studio and the artists they have there. And in fact, for those who don't know and they might have some doubts about what are the different roles in the industry, they have a specific section in their YouTube channel that explains each single role they have in their studio. That's pretty much similar to other studios as well. And they had all this experience. My fish was acting weird. So they have all of these kind of experience that you mentioned, where they shared the feeling of actually being there, you know, making something all together and being able to share with the rest, and that the community was always providing feedback on what they did, and that was how they actually were able to, you know, come and keep pushing it. What was your case in this situation, Javi, for your first game art job?
So my first game art job was on an outsourcing studio, but we actually worked on site in an office.
Oh,
Which was a great combination, if you ask me, because we had all the benefits of outsourcing, you know, like the very much a very varied sort of range of projects that we could work on. And at the same time, I got to network a lot with the people there. I got to make good friends with you know, the artists in the studio, and I enjoyed that experience very much. I've only been working from home, I guess, since like 2019 now, and I see the benefits. You know, I get to kind of manage my time in a way that works for me without. I've never been on my first job. I was sometimes on this situation, where when I needed a break, those break times were kind of controlled and so on, and you know, that's not the best experience, I think, when you're working at a studio and where you're working in games, because obviously, you know, we need breaks. And I used to kind of feel insecure about, am I taking a too long of a break, but I'm tired, so maybe I need it, and so on. So obviously, now that I work from home, I feel like that's not a thing anymore. That's not a factor that should worry me. That should worry me at all. At the same time, I really do miss, you know, just walking around the studio while taking a break and just enjoying other people's artworks on their screen without, you know, trying to bother them. But I used to be that person who would kind of check behind in, oh, was it this guy's working on something really cool? And I miss that part very much, very, very much, because it made me develop connections with people who you wouldn't normally develop connections with if you work from home. Not as much, I mean, because I've obviously worked remotely in cross department efforts. You know, working with programmers, working with technical artists, and so on, narrative, mocap, and I just, what I mean is that when you're working around in the studio and you see something that you like, I've said this many times. I think it's a great way to introduce yourself to somebody. If you're like, well, I like very much what you're doing, you know, and you know, they
Yeah,
will
having
feel
a
that sort of, oh, this person's very nice.
having that middle
So that's
point of
something.
interest, between you
Yeah,
and the other
exactly.
person.
Exactly. Like, hey, I'm interested in your work. And I used to do that a lot with narrative. I used to do that a lot with technical artists and even other departments from within the art department, maybe character art or concept, which is something that, you know, nowadays when working remote, it feels a lot more like I can, if I'm not paying attention to this, it's very easy that I just focus on my stuff and I do my stuff and that's it. You know, it's not so much that when taking a break I can walk around and I notice that there's other people around me. But of course, you know, both things have a good point,
Yeah.
and it's just about understanding that point and trying to understand what can I do about this. So if I don't speak with people enough, what should I do? Well, then try to speak with more people. So yeah, it's not huge issues in any point. I like both of them.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
wouldn't be able to
Definitely,
choose probably.
yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Nick.
definitely what different people prefer, like different setups, and each one has its like limitations, and each has its pluses.
Mhm.
So I think for the most part, you have to kind of decide on your own what's
Mhm.
the plus and what's the. So for example, for me, the big the big plus in the studio is, as you said, meeting people and meeting your colleagues, because that
Mhm.
you're not making the game on your own. You're making it with 200, 300 people. So it's always good to know the people in person, or go to the social events that the studio is doing, or team building, stuff like that. But on the other hand, for example, you when you're in a more junior role, you're always kind of forced to move to the country
Yeah.
that you need to work in. For example, I moved to the UK in Cambridge, and Cambridge is super expensive. So
Yeah.
as a city, I didn't really enjoy living in the city. So basically, we had COVID, we had lockdowns, and uh, I was kind of feeling like isolated there. And I've also been spending like so much money on just existing there. So
Yeah.
for me, like it at one point it wasn't really worth living in a place where I didn't enjoy, just for me to be working there, because
Mhm.
a lot of people do a lot of they spend a lot of time working on their portfolios, and they finally get that job, they're super happy. But after you get the job, after you're stable, you have to also think about your personal life and what makes you happy outside of work, because at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, it's just a job. So if you're not happy outside of your job, something needs to change. So basically,
Absolutely.
for me, it was it was not working anymore. So I went to my boss and I told him, look, I need to kind of explore other options. I have like interviewed with other studios. What can we do for me to change my situation? Because I don't like my personal life at the moment. And I told him that I had like other interviews, other offers, and they decided that I can now work from back home from Bulgaria, from another country, and that kind of fixed my issue at the moment. So the remote work in my case definitely helped me to be more happy outside of work. And when I'm happy outside of work, and when the studio uh, cares about how I feel, that makes me a better worker and makes me want to work better for them. So it's
Yes.
always like this relationship between the studio and its employees. If the employees are happy, they're gonna stay longer in your company. They're gonna be more happy to work for you. So I think that for me, the remote work gives me this work-life balance that I missed when I was back there. So that's the plus for me.
Yeah, in fact, you mentioned two things that I wanted to do, like two different podcasts about this, but we can deviate a small amount of time to it. That was, that fear of having to move out on your first game art job when you have to relocate, and it's a big one, to be honest, because as you said, Nick, it's not easy to move, to another country where the culture is completely different. How money works is completely different as well. In my case, I had two options. One was to the UK, and the other one was for Bulgaria as well. I can't remember. It was for creative assembly. I think we have a conversation about it, Niki.
We had a conversation with it, yeah.
And I choose not to go because I was really scared. And I today say, I mean, it could have been different, It could have been a different experience, and I would kind of enjoy it anyways. And okay, nowadays I'm kind of with another position, of course, but you kind of have that, despite you don't actually think about it or feel it, you have that kind of resistance to having that change of moving to another country to have a job, because your life is gonna change drastically. Like, you're gonna be leaving behind a lot of things, and most of the things people just like, when someone's kind of like moving from country, they think about the people they're leaving behind, but there's a lot of things, If I, like, for example, I love where I live right now. I have literally where I live, I have 5 blocks away the gym, 3 blocks away my best friend's house. Yes, I have my family 10 minutes of driving here. I mean, I have everything where I am. And if I move to another country, that's just, it doesn't disappear, but it's just gonna be way different.
It's also the culture you're leaving behind, and the
people.
Culture is. So the people of the country. So like every place is different. We have the saying in Bulgarian, which translates to the stone always weighs on its place. So wherever you go, you're always gonna be weighed down from where you came. So for me, it was a bit different because I've lived in a couple of different countries before. So I lived for like half a year in the US. I've lived for a couple of months in Portugal. And when I was looking at jobs and I got the job for the UK, I was like super excited to go. And it also happened really fast because I had to go there before Brexit, because I didn't need a visa before Brexit. So when I got the job, they basically told me I have like 2 weeks to just move to another country and basically change my life in 2 weeks. But because I lived in other countries, I had like a lot of very high expectation on how life would be in the UK and how I would feel there, because I always enjoyed living in other countries before. But when I went there, it's like stuff just didn't click for me, and I left being very disappointed because my expectations were quite different to what the reality was. And the thing with Europe is the more north you go, and especially if you're from a southern country like I am, like people are quite different, so you're not always gonna click that well. And when I lived in a southern country like Portugal, like we immediately clicked with everyone we met. So as I said, the country is the people, and if it's not your place, it's never gonna be. So that was basically the issue for me, and not moving because I was like super excited to move in the beginning, but you see, always the expectation and the reality are always different.
Hmm. What was your case, Javier? Because I remember we talked about
No,
this during the
Yeah.
interview, but we kind of like scratched
I
the
can-
surface. We didn't go that deep.
I can relate to this quite heavily. Now, my situation was a bit different. I back back like when I started moving around in Europe, remote work wasn't an option. Spanish opportunities weren't that great, and they were definitely not abundant. So there was no option. If I wanted to work in games, I had to move to a different country. You could freelance, yes, but the quality of the work, it was difficult to find. As a non-established freelancer, it was difficult to find work. It's not like now that you have remote, especially like during and since the pandemic, you get more remote opportunities. That's just a
Yeah.
fact. But that wasn't something that was happening before. So I remember that the first time I moved to the United Kingdom, which was for working with Rockstar Games, I had super high expectations. That at the same time, I think I learned a lot from this, because I learned that expectations are precisely what killed this opportunity for me. Because when I had higher expectations, they're ignorant expectations. In my particular case, they were ignorance-based expectations, because I didn't know what it was like to live in the UK. So I had to move to Scotland. I had these expectations. They obviously weren't met because they weren't based on information, and I just ended up moving back after 6 months of working in there. But then I ended up having to move back to the UK again, and that second time it was a little bit smoother. Like, I already knew what to expect. I already knew what I was doing, and that was smoother. And then the third time that I had to move to the UK, it was already an opportunity for me that allowed me to look for exactly the right things, um, to make sure that I was going to be happy. And again, it was based on all that experience from the first times I tried to move from my country to a different country. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and you leave so much behind. And the in my particular case, I don't like traveling very much, because I kind of have this problem where I'm leaving behind my responsibilities temporarily, and I'm trying to understand how I cannot be like a hyper responsible person. And when I leave my responsibilities behind, I kind of can't disconnect from them. So something that works really well for me personally is moving to another country, because that for me is like the adventure of traveling. I get to meet the culture from within, and at the same time, I am moving my responsibilities with me. So that's something that I understood after all these attempts. The first two kind of failed attempts at moving to a different country. The second time, sorry, the third time that I moved out of Spain was quite successful because of this. And then the fourth time that I moved out of Spain, which was for Sweden, also I did that with no expectations and really no idea what I was going to find, just up for the adventure. And I think that's something really important, especially when you're going, as you said before, coming from Southern Europe, going to Northern Europe, the culture is very different. So you're leaving a lot behind, and the most difficult thing that I left behind was the way I established relationships with people. That's something I couldn't do in the same way that I do in Spain right now. So yeah, I definitely get that. It's a very difficult thing to do, moving out. It's a lot of sacrifice, and yeah, I don't know. I
For
think it's
me,
up
what you
for
said,
the. Sorry,
yeah,
just
for me,
one
what
more
you
thing.
said,
That
like,
the only
yeah,
thing
sorry.
that sorry, the only thing that I would say is that like any piece of advice for people that need to move out is to manage their expectations. Is that you can't expect something to work a way or the other. You might be better off taking it as an adventure and something that you will discover, and that you understand it will take time, because moving to another country is not going to just welcome you with open arms. There's a lot of work that you need to do in order to establish that social network that you have around you, and that safety net that you have around you in your home, to establish that on a different country. So it takes time. Don't expect it to happen overnight or even in like a month. Probably will take you a few years.
Yeah. You were going to talk, Nikki?
Yeah, and also like what you mentioned, with you said you don't like traveling that much. You prefer like moving, and I'm kind of the opposite. I try to travel as much as possible and go to as many places, as many countries as I can. And one of the issues when you live abroad is like uh, I'm taking like all my vacation days just to go back, see my family, my friends,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
taking those. I'm not taking those vacation days to do what I want to do, so travel and move. And now when I have this remote opportunity, I'm doing the job I love, and I'm also like with my family and with my friends. And whenever I want to travel, I have that opportunity. But as you move, you do have to manage your expectation, as you said. But now it's also like even more difficult for those expectations, because you might know people that live in those countries. They've been successful before, but now there's like a lot of geopolitical changes in the environment of Europe. A lot of stuff in the big countries is changing. Like for example, in the UK, in France, in Germany. So uh, it's not gonna be the same as it was, let's say, 4 years ago. So everything is changing, and the future is a bit uncertain. So you do have to really manage your expectation and know that it's gonna be very very difficult in the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah, indeed.
Yep.
Now, going back to our main subject, I wanted to ask you something that I've seen it's quite common between artists, when they have their first job, and it's that they have well, it's something actually that you just said, Javier. Um, I think that we usually have an expectation of how our first job is going to be, because believe it or not, despite we are not talking quite a lot about how an actual job goes for new people, it's not what we think, and I think we do have a lot of expectations. So the question would be, were you disappointed with how your first job was compared to how you picture it would be?
Yeah, you always think you know what it is about, right? What you're gonna be doing. They That just a very silly example, but you get this weapons artist position, right? And you think you're gonna be making weapons, but then many times I've had this situation where, at first maybe there's no weapons to make, or there's more overload of a different type of asset, also hard surface related or not, on a different area, and it doesn't matter what you expect. um the reality of the job sometimes is that you really need to be open to doing a bit of everything. So yeah, it's quite dangerous to be expecting that the job is going to be like this, and then because it's certainly going to turn out to be a different thing than what you were expecting.
To me,
Yeah.
it's also like the project might be an issue, or it might not be. For example, at Frontier, every project feels like you're working in a different studio with different people and different management, different planning, different concepts, different IPs. So in one project, everything can be like super smooth and super nice, and you're all happy about everything. And the next project, everything is on fire, and nobody knows what's happening, and you're struggling for deadlines, and you have to do overtime. And the next project, it's again chill, it's again nice. So it's depending on which project we work. You're your life can be very nice or very chaotic. But in terms of like a material artist perspective, you don't have that thing where with that the environment artists or hard surface artists have, where you're given like a bunch of different stuff to do. As a material artist, you're just given a bunch of different surfaces, so you have to think about how to approach these, how to translate them from concept to game, and it's more or less exactly how you would imagine work will be. But you also do have to do a lot of managing resources and planning and stuff like that. So that's outside of your technical material work. But I would say for a material artist, it's more close to what you would imagine than from what an environment artist or a hard surface artist would imagine, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, my case was quite similar to. So in my case, my first job, I think the first 3 months was a completely disappointment, but just it was a hard situation there. So it was pandemics, and as soon as I got in, I had to receive my workstation, the computer from the studio. They were held up by at least 4 months for that. So I was actually getting paid and watching my screen by getting paid and doing nothing for 4 months. Yes, because they couldn't send me the workstation. Finally, they did send it to me. When I got the workstation, I was hoping, to do what I had practiced all that time. That was working, making materials inside Substance Designer, making some shaders in Unreal Engine. And the first task I got was completely, it was nothing I had practiced before. I think it was something like, okay, just mix some mega scans and then mix the ambient occlusion, roughness, and other maps into one single image, and I had no clue how to do that. So that's once when I started to have, kind of these, let's say, questions about the job I was having, and the more I kind of moved forward, the more questions I have about that, because they weren't what I expected, I remember there's something I also did that I've actually learned in that studio, that it was about texturing props using Substance Designer. We kind of built a tool at that moment, of which I could not talk about, but we kind of built a tool for masking. And at the beginning, I was super frustrated, but after that, I kind of got a grasp of it. Like, hey, it's my job. It's not like I'm going to do what I like to do. I'm going to do what the team needs me to do in order to achieve the goal we all want to have, that is making the game. And I think that's a really important mindset that many people don't have at the beginning, but because they are not experienced enough, or because they don't know how things, or don't understand how things actually work. But it's kind of a really nice way of seeing it, instead of seeing your work as, okay, I'm gonna join to do what I like. I'm gonna join to do what I like while I help others. And most of the times, helping others is gonna be something you're really gonna like doing. Like, I barely have seen someone who doesn't like helping others to when you have a common goal, into this kind of experience. Now, talking about these specific scenarios I was just mentioning, getting your first job, having these new experiences where I had to do things I didn't know anything about. How much did you guys learn in your first game art job? Because there's always an expectation of, if I get into the industry, I'm going to be able to learn a whole lot. And sometimes it is that way, and sometimes it's not, as Niki said before.
For me, it was a bunch of stuff. Like, a lot. It made me the artist I am today. I had like 20% of the knowledge I needed to actually develop something, and by the end of it, I had 100% of it, and it needed to be polished, obviously. Like, I'm not saying I know everything. I'm saying I knew I had a really strong base when it comes to game dev. Maybe not 100%, but let's say 95%. There's always things to learn, and there's always new tools. But at the time, it's just it was overwhelming the amount of stuff I discovered. Again, coming from a self-taught place, you know, where my portfolio was a good portfolio, it was by far not ready to be hireable. Um, but somehow I guess lightning struck and I was hired. Um, I guess passion during the interview did a lot. But yeah, man, I learned a lot. And even when I thought I wasn't learning, I was learning about soft skills and I was learning about collaboration and I was learning about all those other tools that maybe you don't use your hands for. You're more using like your brain for and yeah, it was overwhelming. As I said during like at the beginning, that insecurity of not being good enough came from that sort of I just saw like an abyss of new things that I needed to learn, which with time it turned into a lot of how do you say like illusion, not illusion, it's not the right word, but like a lot of uh, like excitement to learn all those new things that I now knew that I needed to learn. So for me, it was massive.
What was your
Yeah, I
case,
would say
Nick?
same. Yeah. So in my first couple of jobs, I really didn't feel like I was learning that much because as I told you, like in those jobs, when I got hired, I'm like the guy who knows the most about the project. So I don't have anybody else to ask what's going on. Because in my first job, we did a VR project, and in that VR project, I was like doing environment art, I was coding, I was doing materials, I was doing basically everything. And it was super unoptimized because I half the time I don't know what I was doing. I was like googling tutorials, forums, everything else I can find. So I was feeling very frustrated that I don't have anyone to ask and that people were asking me stuff and I didn't know almost anything. So I, those were definitely something that I was trying to get away from, and I was having a big expectations for my next job for this small studio that I don't want to name, but I was expecting everyone there to be super organized and to know everything, and I can ask again. And I started the job there, and it didn't turn out to be that way, and I was very disappointed. And finally, when I joined Frontier, everything else changed. And basically, in my first year, I learned more than anything I've learned before. Like I had so much stuff thrown at me to learn, and my skill level just went insane from that. And I have like a lot of smart people in my team and the people I work with, especially my lead. Also, he's like very strict. So when I was starting and I didn't do something correctly, like he would always tell me, "So this isn't right. You should start this from scratch. You should start this from the beginning." So and it wasn't personal. Like he just wants everyone in the team to be comfortable with feedback and to implement it. And in the beginning, I was thrown these materials that I've never done before. Because when you start doing your portfolio in your other small jobs, you haven't done that many materials. Like let's say you've done 10 materials for your portfolio, and you've done like maybe 100 materials or 150 materials uh, for your other first small job, small gig. And now, like after almost 4 years at Frontier, I've done thousands of materials, and I'm very comfortable with any texturing ordering program. And in the beginning, they give me these materials, and I start doing them, and nothing is working. I get these awful feedbacks, and I was like very stressed about it. But now I'm very excited when I get something I haven't done before, because it's like, oh, a new challenge. How would I do this? And even for my portfolio, when I have time to work on it, I always choose now materials that I've never done before or something super complex, just because like that's now fun for me. Like doing stuff I haven't done before. Oh, that's a challenge. I'm taking it, and I want to do this. So I'm definitely working so much uh, to improve the places I lack skills in. and having those people to actually ask advice and talk to that are way smarter than you is very important. For example, my lead, he does a lot of experiments with designer and with scripts and stuff when he's outside of work. And for example, he made a small Doom-inspired game inside of Designer, like he renders walls in Designer and ceilings, and a player that navigates those walls and ceilings and maps, and everything is rendered inside the 3D view of Designer. So it's like
Sorry, I was
insane
muted.
amount of
That's crazy, man.
knowledge. Yeah. So he's always doing like tools like that. So it's incredibly crazy. Like every time I think I'm good at design, I just uh take a look at what he's done and like go, damn.
That's something very important to have like role models that, like in a job, that can actually make it look like you need to get to their level. Like they have a I guess an example of where you could be. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, for example, my lead, like when he was in university, he studied with Sebastian, the guy, the creator of Substance. So they studied at the same place. They know each other. So you know that he's been having that 25 years of experience, so much stuff to learn, and he knows how they did it before. He knows how they did it now, and all the different quirks and little technical parameters and technical side of stuff. So having, as you said, those role models and people to look up to is very motivating, I would say, because when you're the smartest person in the room, you should leave that room and go to the next one where you have to strive to be the dumbest person in the room, basically, to then you're in the right place because you have to strive to be better.
Yeah, in fact, this conversation, I have a question from the public. We're gonna go right to it, Arthur. But just as we're checking out this, I just don't wanna lose this thread. I had some other questions, and one of them was, did you have a hero on your first job? And this looks like it's his, this guy looks like the Doom playing guy in Designer. He looks like your hero in your job, and I think that's great actually, having someone like that. And it is true what you said before. So in my 2 jobs I had before, in all of them I was the first one to get in the studio that knew Substance Designer and was an actual material artist. I mean, the rest of the artists that were there, most of them knew how to do materials, but mostly for props. Yes, when it came to environment textures, they had their skills in art side, but technically they were lacking some, and it was kind of a mix, and I felt like I wasn't able to learn as much. Now that I'm working, with Emil, who was a material artist from Ubisoft, the scenario is completely different. Just a small feedback from him gets to like kind of direct me in the right way, and already makes me create better things. Although he doesn't have that much time, to do things as you were saying, kind of like get in Substance Designer and build a full game inside Substance Designer. He does have sometimes every now and then, and gives me a specific hand with that, but most of the times he delivers to me, but the feedback he gives me, it's just 10 times better than before. So in your case, Javier, which was your, let's say your first job hero, or it could be your second job hero, because I know that from all your jobs, the ones you really, really enjoy was the one at Dumbbuster Studios. That was the name.
Yeah.
So it's complete.
So I've worked with extremely talented people, and a few people come to mind. Like from my first job, I remember this guy Alberto, who was my first lead, the first lead I ever had at a project, and he came from studying fine arts. I remember that there was just nothing that could resist, Alberto's hand. I mean, he would do anything, organic, non-organic, and he would totally kill it. And for me, that I came from the mindset that was starting to get quite popular with juniors, that you have to get extremely specialized in your career that kind of opened my eyes, and I saw the potential and the extreme use of knowing everything, like being open to doing everything and learning about everything, not just this one very particular thing. So he was extremely talented because he spent like a lot of time painting with like traditional painting and sculpting, and he was a great artist. Then I can also remember this technical artist from Dambuster Studios, principal technical artist, and same thing. He was extremely talented with technical art. He could solve any problem. Um, he was also really good at more like traditional art, fine art, and 3D art, and so on. Like he could tackle anything. But what really made him my hero was that by that time my mentality was kind of like, I don't want to be a bother. I'm not going to speak too much. I'm going to make sure that I'm kind of quiet and I don't voice my opinion so much. But then this guy came in and one day he said, like, you don't give your input. Why is that? And I was, I guess they were asking about my input for an issue, and I was really insecure, and I said, it's just that I don't want to say a stupid thing, And he said, well, your stupid answer could be a trigger to my like to a very brilliant thought that someone else can have over here, which was just mind opening. And it's these are the types of like these heroes that I've had throughout these past years on the industry. They come more from their philosophy, not so much just them being super good at work, but their philosophy of fighting any problem no matter the shape it has, and having really strong core values on how we should work, how we could collaborate, and how they made you feel very important to their processes and to your own place and workspace. So yeah, I've had many heroes. um just those are those two of the ones that I remember the most. The lead layout artist at Dambuster Studios, also someone who really pushed me to be my best self. I was very scared that I would lose my artistic hand if I would, join his team and help lay out the maps for Dead Island 2. But I ended up discovering something that I love, which is making blockouts and collaborating with other teams to make sure that the level design works, that the narrative works. This is the time that I also learned about storytelling as early as with blockouts, really, and how important that is to kind of shape the direction of a level. So yeah, these are people that truly have an impact on how you see art and how you see the world. So I'm very grateful to them, honestly. And I
Great.
need a second because the dogs are. I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure. So in the meantime, Nick, I have a question for you from the public. Yes, it's from Arthur. He's saying, hey, Bedan here. My question is, how can we junior or fresher find material art job? Because everywhere I see, there's only senior material art jobs in the industry right now. We can't hear you, Nick.
You hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's a complicated question, to be honest. I think last time we also spoke about that briefly, but right now, after all the layoffs and stuff, a lot of studios don't wanna take chances, and it's really hard to kind of find a studio that would give junior positions at the moment, just because of how everything is, and it sucks and it's not fair, but it is the case right now. The other thing is, like, even a lot of studios won't really publish what specific role the material artist position is. So, for example, we have like still 2 open positions up front here, and we've not published if we're looking for junior, mid, senior principals. We wanna kind of see everyone who applies. It's definitely more complicated for junior positions, because we also are looking for some people that are more experienced, but there are juniors that are incredibly good, incredibly talented, and those will always kind of stand out from the rest of them. And it's very important when you're looking for your junior position to kind of start having some experience, I would say. So start looking at some, I would say, startup companies, some freelance jobs, some very little local companies, anything that you can kind of use a 3D software in. Just look for it to get some experience, to know how it is to work with people, and to be able to put it in your CV. That's a lot better than applying and having literally nothing in your CV to begin with. So basically, that's what I did. I worked in a couple of startup companies, then one indie studio, and then I went to Frontier. So that definitely helped. But to get back to what I was saying, there's definitely some juniors that have a lot of skills and a lot of talent. We had a junior environment artist that came straight from university, and his portfolio and his skills were almost on the level between senior and principal. He was like incredibly good, and that's how he got the job with almost zero experience. And it's, as I said, don't start applying to jobs even if they're not listed as junior. Be confident in your interviews, be confident in your portfolio, and try to get some little experience, whatever it is, in your CV, because it does help.
Well, there's something you mentioned right there that I did see that when I started with the community. I saw that as a problem nowadays, that many artists, they do portfolio pieces, but they don't have a lot of experience, and it's hard to get experience and to become a senior, for a senior position, being the senior position the only position available for material artists, And it came something to my head that I already shared with Javier the other time. And just to get you in context, Javier, Bedan here asked us that, taking in consideration how the industry is, and that there's only senior material artist position, how do we get a junior position? That was his question. So you mentioned something really particular that I do think is really really interesting and smart. That was the part of working in a team. So in the community, and this is also a personal question of mine, in the community, I'm aiming to do something a little bit different, where I try to, with the professionals I'm working in the community, let's say like the staff between brackets, if we have personal projects which are big, being able to delegate some tasks to some of our students so they can work with us. So that way it will be kind of a small mentorship where they get to do the things they like, yes, get feedback from professionals, and as well have a portfolio piece where they show they have been able to work in a team into building an environment. Would that be helpful for them, having this kind, not specifically the situation I'm trying to portray, but being able to do like kind of artworks or projects with other artists in kind of group projects? Would they help them in their situation, portfolio wise and experience wise, maybe?
In my opinion, that would be a bit of a negative, because some other Discord communities do a lot of these environments together, and let's say everybody does a different kind of thing, and everybody does different amounts of work. Let's say one person would do 2 materials, and then the next person is gonna do 20, or one person is gonna do 1 prop, and the next person is gonna do a lot of set dressing. But in the end, everybody on our station would have like a big, so we'll have pictures from the environment. So at first glance, it's gonna be hard to tell which part you've done and which part other people have done, and we always have to kind of double check when we see collaborative projects when we're hiring people.
Okay.
So I would say it's better to kind of make something your own, because that way you develop your own style as well, because that's also important when job seeking, is to be recognizable. Because sometimes when I see a new material, I immediately know from the thumbnail who made it because that's his style and that's recognizable.
Yeah, it happens a lot to me. It is true, because it happens to me a lot that some of my students, when they like post their artworks now, I do feel like they're just trying to do something similar to what I'm doing because that's what I'm teaching them to do. That's the thing. And it's also hard to teach, students to be original, because you teach them what, and I think you, Javier, may have something to add on it for sure, because as me, you're also an educator besides a game artist, but when you teach someone your experience, you tend to teach them how you do things and what you learn from the process. And I think it's really normal that students tend to end up doing exactly what we do instead of finding their own path. And that's kind of like a challenge for us who are educators,
I mean, it's from my perspective, and well, so there was a many things said here, and I think they're all very relevant to touch upon. But I think there was one that I unfortunately I have to disagree. I think group projects, they train people for the reality of what's working in the games industry. You're not gonna develop a project. You're never gonna do all the work alone. And this is something that as soon as you learn that reality, the sooner, like, the more useful you're gonna be as a junior. I would much rather hire a junior who has worked on collaborative projects and understands that their work has an importance as a whole together with the work from everybody else, than someone who has just done personal projects and needs that period of adaptation, which usually tends to be difficult, because of expectations of greatness. This project that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be so important, I'm going to be doing these super huge props. This is what the things that I find with juniors and trainees that haven't had any group experience before. So I think it has a very, very simple solution. When and if you work on collaborative projects, make sure that you clearly disclose what you have worked on and what you haven't worked on. For example, my students at the Onyx Academy, just to not mention, this is what everyone should do, including art dumps from games, is they clearly show screenshots of the assets that they've produced, and they were part of a bigger team that at the end of the day should also empower them to achieve greater things than they could do if they were just one individual. So I see no dark side, no bad side of working in collaborative projects, because it really shows, it really helps you understand the reality of when you're going to be working as an artist. When it comes, you said one thing that is a little bit more difficult about developing your own style. I think that is great. It's a great thing that you can develop your own style, but anyways, when you work at a studio, you're gonna have to adapt to a style. So if you're able to prove that you have your own style, but at the same time you're able to prove that you've worked on a group project, that you were able to adapt your own style to the style of the whole project, that's a much stronger portfolio than someone who just has personal pieces. So I think it's important that we don't discredit group projects, because I think they are the best. Like this, from the very beginning, since I started, people said the best way to get into the games industry was doing mods. And this is not just because it's the closest thing to working in games. It's actually also because of how you have to work together with other people to make sure that you develop a product. And that portfolio piece that you're working together with your friends or together with a group that you don't know from a Discord server is going to show how you're able to adapt to working in a team. So I think we are having completely opposite visions.
So I don't think it's sorry, let me have a take on this before we move forward. I don't think it's like different opinions. I feel we've had different perspectives, because as you said, Nick, and this is true, because I've seen it in I also seen it in other ArtStation posts, is that when you have community projects, happens a lot that they all post the end result first. Yes, they post the big render first, and then they post what they have done. And when that happens, usually it is true that it's hard to understand what part you have done, you know, what part that person has done on the overall project. So I think it's also responsibility of, well, those who develop this kind of events, and in this case it would be me, to find a way for them to have this being profitable for them in their portfolio, meaning being able to show what they have done, be really precise, and how they can do it in order to get aligned with an overall art style for a project, and also how to show them in their own in their own personal way, you know, kind of, let's say if you have an artist, in this case I'm already planning of doing one, and I have a student of mine, Damien. He told me, hey, if you need to, you know, help with some props or even trees, I can go for it. And I was like, hey man, yeah, no problem. And I was thinking the other day how to do something like that. And there are different ways to relate a full project, yes, into between different people and let them show what they actually have worked on. And I think this is something pretty similar to what happens in the actual game art industry. When you work in a big project, yes, you put a title in the thumbnail of of your artwork. You put the name of the game you worked on. Yes, you put the ArtStation title for that artwork, which kind of it's a little more explicit, and then inside of that, then you have all the other pieces you have made. You know, kind of like I've seen a lot of use of artworks where they post, you know, a specific part of an environment where they have several materials they've made on there, and then down there they show how they made the materials. But if they have participated in the actual making and composition of material layer blendering, you know, they kind of show you not only a screenshot of the actual environment in game, but also on with kind of like the UI of the software as well. So yeah, go ahead, Niki, to what you were gonna say.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I do agree with the stuff that Javier said. So I do agree that we're kind of looking at it from different perspectives. We don't have different opinions, because I do think that learning how to work in a team is important, and learning how to adapt to a style is something that's also very important when you're looking at portfolio and when you're looking at someone to hire. So that could be very important. It's important to show exactly what you've done on those collaborative projects. So it's not just screenshots from the main environment, the main fancy render, but also from developing personal projects. Let's say in those collaborative projects, they're gonna task you with make these materials or make these props. You would have someone that gives you the tasks. But when you're still learning and when you're still like very, very early in your career or just your journey in 3D, when you start working on, let's say you're doing an environment in Unreal that has a lot of stuff going on, a lot of shaders, a lot of effects, a lot of lights, stuff, you're gonna at some point face something you haven't done before, which will then prompt you to start researching stuff, which in turn will get you in another rabbit hole to start learning completely different stuff. And you started with modeling something, and by the end of the night you're researching like shaders, color spaces, stuff like that. And something we quite often look at portfolios is if someone has done something really clever or in a clever way. So let's say you've done a very clever shader that does something very interesting, that fakes an effect that's usually very expensive. Let's say some waste on your ocean that I've done like inside of the shader that displays geometry in an interesting way, or you've used a node in Designer that's not supposed to be used that way to achieve a specific effect. That kind of shows us that you can kind of think outside of the box, and when there's a specific problem at work, you're gonna have like you're gonna be clever enough to give a good suggestion on how to tackle it, or you can even solve it. So I don't think your projects can be bad. I do think they can benefit you, but you can also benefit a lot from your personal projects if you're
Yeah.
pushing yourself enough from your outside of your comfort zone.
Absolutely, and I think the best thing is if you have the opportunity to collaborate on a project, obviously go ahead and do it. But you should never put all eggs in one basket anywhere. Like this is not. I don't think this should be a black or white. You either have one or you have the other. You should have. If you can have both, then that's great. But I think what should it's a mix, and it's part of what I was saying, because when I said, developing your own style and how you put it together with the style of the projects that you're collaborating, showing that you can have a personal style that you put together with the other project is something that you're actually doing. So that in order to do that, you need that personal style that would be with the personal piece. So definitely you should, if you base your it's like tutorials. If you base your portfolio only on tutorials, it's not going to be the best portfolio you can have. Well, it's the same thing for collaborative projects. They show a lot of things, but it's when I review portfolios and from professionals with ship titles, I love seeing all those levels that you did for that game, but I also want to see what you did on your own without having an art director and a lead and someone who's to a sense assisting you with your art. I want to be how self-sufficient you are, and I want to be how you do that without any help. So obviously personal work is crucial because it's showing what artist you are without the influence of so it goes both ways. Collaborative work and projects in a AAA, AA indie projects that you have in your portfolio, it's a double-edged sword. You are also showing how you adopted that style, but also how you contributed to the style of the project. So I think there should be a little bit of everything, and definitely it's not a one thing or the other. But I think I agree with you that if you only have collaborative as well as if you only have professional work in your portfolio, I'm lacking something when I'm reviewing that portfolio. I'm lacking that personal part of being an artist.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do agree on that.
exactly. And the other thing you mentioned, like with the tutorials, because like there aren't that of many tutorials, they're very recognizable. So the moment you start reviewing someone's portfolio or someone's applied for a job, you immediately can tell that that's from a tutorial. It's very nice that you can follow instructions, and that shows it really well. But that doesn't really help us see what you can do on your own, which is important for us to see how you can manage that. And a lot of the issues with those with a lot of junior portfolios is that they're either looking at the same tutorials and you have a bunch of tutorials on their portfolio, or they're looking at other artists that they aspire to be and they're imitating them, like everybody imitating Daniel Tigger like 3 years ago. So that's something that's very very noticeable, I would say. So you do have to have a mix of stuff in your portfolio for it to kind of stand out as well. So I think that's important.
So something you mentioned right now, and the other day I have a chat with one of my students and with Kai, is that every now and then you have this kind of, let's say, in between brackets, heroes that come out in the industry. In this case, of course, specifically about material art, we're talking, as you mentioned, Daniel Feiger, Chris Hudson, now Javier Perez. There are many artists that have kind of a huge name, and what usually happens is that people try to, copy them. And when they try to copy them or be them, the problem is that they are missing the point of why they are so good at what they do. And they are good at what they do because they are just being themselves. They are allowing themselves to explore what they are trying to do, and they're trying to do something that is really good and that they enjoy doing it. In my case, it was similar. Like, for example, I really love, Enrico Samhat, a great mentor for myself, Javier Perez, also Daniel Tiger, Chris Hudson. I at the moment, it was like the boom for them. They were really, really huge and great artists. And instead of just going to and do something like what they did, I tried to figure out my own way, just to do things. That, well, I think you remember, the kind of like the renders that we once had the conversation about, having the renders in a sphere, or the renders on the way I do it for the thumbnails, where I have a plane with a light. And it ended up working out. Every single post I made where material was really good and I have really great lighting like that one, it turned out to being so interesting for other people. And it was kind of original, because nowadays when I see someone else that is trying to do or learn from me and they do something like that, it's like, yeah, this guy most surely saw one of my tutorials or came to one of my classes or is a student of mine, because they try to do exactly what I do. And same happens with our artists. They try to do the same materials, Daniel Tiger did, the same materials Enrico Tamha did, but there's a loss in originality when you try to do that. And that's the actual
originality and a loss of quality as well, because a lot of the students don't realize that these people do this for a job every day, 10 hours a day maybe, and then after their job sometimes they do portfolio work. And let's say I'm at work, I've done like 1,000 materials, I've perfected certain types of materials, and my skills on those. So those are I'm developing every day my styles and my skills, and I can constantly do these. While the students are trying to develop their portfolio, and they're just trying to see what works for the people and what doesn't. So they try to really imitate that. But I think that's kind of inevitable. Each student will go through that phase of copying until they finally get to their own their own style.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I have another question for you, Nick. It's from Sam. She's asking, hey, I completed an art test and I was asked to share my original Substance Designer file. Is this a common practice in the industry? Is it okay to share our work file? Because I heard that some people exploit artists this way.
Yeah, people tend to really exploit students tend to really exploit people on art tests. And for example, we rarely give art tests, but when we give them art tests, we probably won't ask for the substance file. We can get on a call and we can kind of look at how they made it, so they can explain their thought process while what they were making them. But I don't think that's a big of an issue to give them the substance file, because it's usually not going to be used in production. But some studios definitely do exploit artists, especially juniors. Because for example, if I have to do an art test now, I always send them a quote for the amount of money I want for the art test, and for because they're taken away from my free time that I would spend otherwise with my friends or with my family. But when you're a junior, you don't have the luxury of asking for money when you're desperate for a job, and that's the place where they tend to exploit you. Because if they pay me for the work, I don't really care about what they do with the file. But if they haven't paid me, then that's a bit tricky. But what we try to usually do is hop in a call and let the person walk us through the whole thought process behind how they made it. Because that kind of shows us more of how they think rather than the end result, which is important.
Yeah. In fact, I think that alongside all my art tests as a material artist, most of the time I could ask the Substance Designer files. I never had. Well, yes, I did have one. The one I told you, Javier. I think it was during our interview, an art test that was kind of tricky. And very bad paid, but yeah, I mean, usually it's good to share I think that for the one who is actually senior artist, it's good to see how you did things, and it's really important about that, because I remember that in my first job, I just joined in, I was the only material artist, but After some time, someone else joined behind me, let's say some 5 to 6 months later, and he was really good with the materials. And it was like, he's doing this so great. What's his secret? And when I was talking with him and he showed me how he was doing things, the way he did the procedural materials, he would get an image that was straight, yes, like let's say a very aligned image of any website. Then he would try to build the height as similar as he could, and the base color would be that image, and that would be his procedural material. It's like, as an overall material, the result was good, you know, but for production, that was not good at all. You're taking an image from you don't know where. If someone can tell you something, you can't change anything. Like if I change the height, or if I want to change the amount of tiles per per square, then it's gonna be a mess to make that, because you can't do that in an already made picture, so it's kind of broken into the person. So sometimes having the Substance Designer graph to see how that person works in Substance Designer is actually really efficient for those who are trying to hire you, to see if you're there or not. But I think you, Nick, have way more experience in that, so I'm gonna leave it to that. In the meantime, I need some water, so I'm gonna run and fetch a glass for my water, because I didn't bring it. So feel free to keep talking about this topic, guys.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Another thing that you learn in studios is that you can actually open other people's files and see how they work. So especially for Substance Designer, like when I know that someone from the studio, from our team, has done a specific material that I haven't done before, or if I want to save some time, I'm just gonna open their file, look at how they've done, or just steal a little bit of graph here and there and put it in my graph, and that works pretty well. And that also helps you learn quite a lot, like opening other people's graph and see how they think and how they work, because everyone is kind of approaching those differently. It's a bit different than 3D modeling for the most part, because there are only a certain ways you can approach something. Well, when it's a hard surface model, but when you're doing like stuff with graph, like in Substance Designer or Houdini and stuff, it's very, very fun to kind of pick apart how other people think.
Yep. I think it's fine. I think if you share, like, you've already spent your time, and I think we should, as much as there's a lot of scammers out there, we should still have some, like, I guess, the presumption of innocence. I'm not sure if that's the right translation for English, but if you trusted the studio with your time, I think you should, which is your most valuable thing. I think an SBS isn't really such a big deal to send. Obviously, if they ask for more and more and more and more, and you find yourself in a loop of just making work and sending it, that's it. That's a red flag. But yeah, I know is this a common practice in the industry? Yes, it is, to ask for files. And well, if they exploit you, it's the dangers of the internet. It does suck, but I think it would suck more if they were a legit company and you would be spending all that time and then you wouldn't trust them with your SBS. I think that's a worse scenario. So if we put both on a balance, I would much rather get scammed than distrust a company that was actually going to hire me. So, but of course, I might be a bit naive, but I think I spent already my most valuable resource, which is time. So whatever follows is okay.
Yeah, and as I said, we at least we as a company try to, if we give our test, which is very rare, we try to get on a call and see how the person thinks and what's the thought process because of behind how they made it. Just because there's the other option where a candidate can, let's say, hire someone else to do the substance file, and that way they can send a file that they haven't made. And when you go on a call, you establish that trust between you, and also you can kind of see if they really made it, because then they would be able to explain every step of the way. how they made that. But yeah, as Javier said, it's you've invested the time. One SBS file, not too bad.
Yeah.
So I have another question here from Nikita, and I really like this question because I do feel kind of a relation to something that happened to me. But she asked, or he asked, because I think last time we have the same problem with Nikita, I think.
Okay,
Nikita is he, one of my students.
Okay, he asked, did your sorry, Nikita. Did your relationship with games change after you entered the industry and started to work there professionally? Yes. Completely. For me, completely, yes. I couldn't... I think that at the beginning, I kind of stopped enjoying games, actually, to be honest. It was something particular because I think it was at that moment that I was really burnt out because I was pushing myself too hard on everything I did, and I had so many big expectations about myself that I got tired. I grew tired of everything, game art related. So when I got into a game, I was looking to the game, and I wouldn't really enjoy the game because I was looking to the environments, the textures, thinking about how can we do this. So everything that I was doing in work was being translated to games. At that moment. Now it's different. I'm more relaxed, but because I have many things to do, I mean, I work in games, I do creative content, I do learning content, I also train and help other people train and be healthier, including members of my family, and of course I have, now I play games again. But there was a moment when I joined the industry that I wasn't able to really enjoy a game. I don't know if that's normal. It's a good question, to be honest.
Normal.
It is normal? It happened the same to you guys?
I think so. When I started doing my portfolio and working, when I was at uni, I was working 4 jobs. I was studying at university. I was doing my portfolio, and I was completely drained. When I joined Frontier, I was still working on my portfolio. I was still working a lot to prove myself, and I'm just spending so much time improving in this field, and I couldn't really have some free time that I can sit in front of the computer or TV and play something. But now, when everything is a bit more relaxed, I can now enjoy it again. And I now have a lot more appreciation for games. When I see a game that gets bad reviews or people saying that it's trash because of this and this, I do try to appreciate how much time and effort the devs put in the game, because I know now how hard it is to make games. It's not an easy thing if anybody thinks it's easy, and we do strive to be perfect every time. And the other thing that completely got in the ruin for me is completely over analyzing how anything in a game is made. I'm gonna stop and look at a texture or a lamppost, and they made it that way, or that's the bad UV. That completely ruined the game now for me.
I think that the funniest moment I have after I joined the industry and I was working in a studio and I was playing with my friends is that I was working at an outsourcing studio, and that studio was known to work with EA. So the Battlefield 2032 was already out, and I couldn't tell my friends what I have been working on or anything like that because of NDAs. So we were used to we got into different gameplays, we were playing, and every 5 minutes I would get a question hey Ezekiel, come here, and it was yes, what's that? Did you make this rock? It wasn't. No, I can't tell you, but I didn't make this rock. Okay. And 5 minutes later they would come and ask me again, hey, did you make the camo for this guy that is laying on the ground hidden here in between the leaves? And it was no man, stop asking, and they would be doing that repeatedly. There was a funny story that just came out of my mind. I have Edu here, Javi, from your students.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, I have a question for you. Has it ever happened to you in your professional career that for some reason you had to work stoppage where you had to leave the industry? For example, you find yourself out of work momentarily and you have no choice but to look for something else. Mm, trying to
Not
assimilate the
exactly,
Yeah,
question.
perfect.
to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's different for like for depending the artist and their life experience. It's different because uh,
I
our
have.
works. When you mean
I have.
stoppage, is it because like personal decision you decided to work, or is it because you just lost your job, like got fired, and that's my question. But yes, I do. I did have. Yeah, I think we talk about this, isn't it, Javi?
Yeah, many times.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my particular case, it's happened once or twice. Actually, it happens twice already. Um, was it hard to get back? No. I mean, I understand that if this is happening right now to you, it might feel like it's gonna be impossible to get back into the industry because not even the people that have stopped, are having difficulties switching jobs, even if they have a job already. So it's a difficult moment. Absolutely, and I can see where you're coming from. Um, there, like, this is an industry that is profitable, and this is an industry that is kind of has been and will be again. I hope, I really hope, and I wish for this to happen very strongly. That this is gonna be, it's kind of like a golden goose egg type of industry in which you can really make a lot of money, like from the perspective of investors and companies and so on. So I don't think this is an industry that will stop working in
That's all.
many years. So and it's cyclic. Like we're going through a bad moment, but there will be a good moment again, like there has been 5 years ago, where pretty much everyone could afford to make their own outsourcing studio and get, like, we saw a boom of outsourcing studio, whereas like before you had just a handful of them and they were very well known. You had Virtuos, you had
Virtus is still going, and
you had a
it's
few that,
big.
yeah,
It's huge.
and they
Black
were very
Shamrock. It's
very,
every day they are hiring new people.
yeah,
They are also really big.
really big,
Yeah,
really
we
big,
also
really
work
well
with
established.
Lakshya, so those are super famous as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
now, yeah,
And 5 years ago we went through this, another one of those booms in the industry where everyone could make a, like, an outsourcing studio, because there was suddenly a need for a lot of projects being done at the same time. There's always needs for artists, because we are I think we are the most numerous departments in the whole industry. Like, the biggest departments that I've worked with in games were art, and like, if you include outsourcing for a project, the most amount of content is art related. So it's gonna pick up a pace again in one shape or the other. Like, we can't expect things to go back to normal. We might experience like a new normal.
Yeah, a
um
change in the
like the
paradigm. I don't know
exactly,
how to say it in English. The word of paradigm.
yeah, just
Um,
just the way we work and the way it's done might be different. There might be more focus on indie studios. There might be more focus on really huge productions that have a. Uh, I hope for this, because that would be amazing. Really big productions that aim for very high detail, very high quality. We might become an industry that just outputs content regardless of quality. Regardless of what happens, I am sure that we will pick up a pace, and it feels like when you leave the industry, you're never going to get back in, because getting in the first place was extremely difficult, as we all know. But as this is something that it really needs to penetrate that membrane. um if you leave, like, if you give up, you already lost. If you don't give up, there is chances that you will make it. So just keep going. If you need to temporarily look for some different job, that's completely fine, but never stop fighting for it, because the moment you stop fighting, it's when you surely will not be back in the industry. If you keep trying, there is a high chance that you will. So if you stop, you fail. If you don't stop, high chances you will make it again.
yeah.
I left a game studio to become a teacher like 7 years ago. I was like, I taught for a year, and I thought I wasn't gonna be able to get back into the industry. You know, nobody wanted to hire teachers, but then I got hired, and you know, that was just a little hiccup I had to overcome. I also became a freelancer, and I was told that freelancing experience had no value, essentially because you're not integrated in the production environment of a team. And I ended up overcoming that hiccup and got a job at full production in-house. Like, it reality and the future is what you make of it. And if you fight for something, if you make your own path towards something, it doesn't matter what other people will say. You will make it, and you will detect where you want to be, and you will not stop until you are where you want to be. So I think that's really the worry that you would have, that you should have. Although I don't want to be patronizing and tell you what you should worry or not, but is where you want to end. And the moment you know that, just keep pushing until you make it, because everything is a challenge.
So
And also, just to add to that, I would say that if you really want something, that something's gonna happen. It might not happen the way you want, but it's gonna happen regardless. And if you give up, there's a bunch of other people that won't give up, and they continue gonna be better than you and keep wanting it more. So the thing about this industry is that if you want to be in it, you really have to want it. You really have to enjoy it. If you don't do it, the industry is definitely not for you. But if you do it and if you stick with it, you're gonna be rewarded with a job that doesn't feel like a job, and you're gonna have a really nice time.
yeah, in fact, what you ask, Edu, it's something we already spoke with Javi, and I think I don't remember what the interview or our last session, but in my case, because I'm a person who is more, I think it's called extrovert in that sense. I don't mind sharing my personal experience once I overcome them. So, for example, in my case, what happened was I was working in a studio, which I'm not gonna name, of course, and they didn't accomplish a contract they've signed with me. Besides that, they gave me 3 months of working about something I was not supposed to work, and I did anyways because I needed a job and I really wanted to stay there. And I kind of lost all respect for them. I lost my passion for art. I got depressed, and after that, I decided to quit the job. And I was jobless for about 8 months, I think, 6 months, maybe. Of course, in an economic standpoint, for me was not a problem because I'm with my parents' house and we don't have any kind of economic problem. That's an advantage I have, and I always try to take that advantage on my favor because that's what my parents have worked for, and it will be not good for me not respectable to take that advantage as well. And to build something that I really love and, kind of move forward to the future as I'm doing now with the community. So at that moment, those 8 months for me were really a hell because I was like super not motivated at all. Like, I haven't touched substance designer for a while, and I really wanted to be a material artist. I have lost most of my skill in substance designer because I haven't done a material for over 4 to 5 months maybe. And I had that feeling that as I was a professional, I couldn't fail, so I couldn't do a bad material. So everything I did was just bad, and it was bad because of how I felt, of how my life was at that moment. I also have a lot of interviews and art tests, and I failed them. Most of the art tests, interviews I did well. Art tests were the ones I failed, of course. And it can happen to you. It's something that I think it's completely normal, but something that Niki and Javier said, and it's completely true, is to not pull your arms down. Something that really helped me into this specific situation is not having a plan B. I have, in this case, the privilege of not having a plan B for a certain amount or period of time, because despite I live with my parents right now, they do want me to have a job. They do want me to do something, productive. It's not that I can be just laying in my bed all day looking at the rooftop and nothing is gonna happen. Of course, they're gonna tell me something. So my way of thinking at that time was like, I just want to work as a material artist in the game art industry. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to go to 3D arc visualization. I don't want to go to the VFX industry. I want to work in the game art industry. I want my job to be that. I want to be a material artist. I want to go be a really great material artist, and I want to inspire people. And despite I was not being able to achieve that during those 8 months, I was still pushing. And in fact, the job I have right now, with Emil, was a job I found when the industry was falling apart at the beginning, when they were falling apart in the sense of a lot of fires, people getting fired and so on. So it is possible to get a job, but you not just need to keep pushing. And there's something else that Javier mentioned that is really, really, really important, and it's about the industry and how it's developing. And there's a really important point to this, and it's that the game art industry, or the game industry, it's really new. It's just like a baby that is developing. If you look to the movie industry, yes, what do you see? How big is the movie industry nowadays? How many events do you have for the movie industry? How many people working in the movie industry do you have? How many consumers do you have from it? How many years have they been in there? So it's really different. Like, for example, right now we are having a podcast, yes, with 3 professional artists talking about specific things for students and any other person who wants to join and learn more. And that's something that it's not quite normal, or I haven't seen that much in our industry. I know that there are some places that they actually do it, but it's most like you told me once, Niki, most of the professional artists that are asked to go for a place to give a talk or anything like that, it's always about teach them people something technical. I barely seen something like this where get to talk about what we have lived, the different experiences inside being an actual professional, because I do believe that your art and your work is the product of how your body, mind, and souls are working together. So if any of those 3 things are not in the right place, most probably your art and your work won't be as good as it could be. So yes, it is important to have this knowledge on technical aspect, but it is important also to have this knowledge on how to deal with certain problems that you will find, yes, along your career. And having that extra help of someone sharing that experience is really great, So again, this is an industry that is in development, so it is normal that the industry starts to fall down, but it only falls down to just get up higher, yes? So I would say not to worry, yes, in this specific case. Maybe right now you wouldn't be able to see a way out of it, but I can assure you that in the future you will. And sometimes it's not gonna be the way you expect to be. So, for example, my case, when I started to study after finishing secondary school, I think I went for computer science and marine biology. Today I'm a game artist. It's like you never know what's gonna happen, but if you want to, as Niki said, if you want something, it will happen. Maybe not the way you want it to happen. Yes, I wanted my first job to be at Ubisoft. What was the name? Ubisoft Massive. It turned out being at Global Gaming Studio. Still working for big studios, but at an outsourcing studio. Not the specific result I wanted, but it was nevertheless what I wanted in the end. Yeah. So again, don't worry about it. You will get there as well. So now, guys, I have Joel making another question here. He asked, Niki, talk about working in local studios in order to get experience. How about a case whereby you have tasted the standard pipeline with more experienced artists? However, the studios in your locality does not appreciate that workflow and settles for less. What do you do in such situations? I do feel a little bit, yeah.
Well, it doesn't really need to be an established studio that you're gonna try to work with. And also, like in these small studios, they're not gonna have any pipelines as well. So you basically, it's basically a free for all. It's not gonna be completely the same stuff you're gonna do in an actual studio. But you would just have to adapt. Like it's not the best thing in the world, but at least you're doing some job in the industry as a whole. For example, my first job was a person from my city who has a company that they do like some software products, and he decided to open a few different companies just to try stuff. And the stuff he hired me for was just something he was trying to do, trying to see if he can make it in there. So it was a complete. He gave me a chance to work and gave me experience, but for
I can relate to that because in Spain we didn't have that much as well. Like 10 years ago when I started, or at least they weren't so famous as they are now, and it seemed like the opportunities they were scarce. But I would definitely have settled for at least something. You know, if you find it very difficult to get that first opportunity, that's like we always say that you know, you're getting your foot through the door, and later on, you know, you will be in a better situation where at least you're making some money, and you can try to look for your more definitive position once you're on a stable position, because there is so much bad that can happen from rushing the job searching. Like for example, you can get like, how do you say, um you can get taken, and you can, maybe someone will try to take advantage of you because you know you only have this offer. Maybe you will definitely settle for less just because you're in a rush. So I think that when you have that first opportunity, maybe you are sacrificing that portfolio, maybe you're sacrificing enjoying that work, or you think that you might be sacrificing that, but that comes at the cost of you being in a stable situation that will more easily get you to that position that you're actually looking for. So I think it's not wrong that your first position, second, third, fourth, they are just you building your career towards where you want to be on your fifth position, for example. Doesn't need to go right from the first place, from the first time. I read this post um, War Dog's CEO, an outsourcing company specialized in weapons, and they were saying, like they like, I think it's from
Oh,
and then she had like a
wait,
concept artist position, and
you
then,
cut. I think you cut in the middle.
oh sorry,
You said you
saying,
read a post from Word Docs and
yeah, sorry, and the CEO was talking about how she started on a wash dishing position, or something like this. Like it was maybe like a cleaner's position, but then she was a concept artist, and then she had to move on to that non-games related position. But then little by little, like building that sort of portfolio from working in those companies, she managed to build a career, and it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in a way that her first position was in games, but actually worrying more about that stability. These are my words, not hers, by the way. But what I take from that is that she was building that stability to make sure that she could feed herself, she could rent a place, and she could have the freedom to improve on her portfolio and take on a larger career when the time was appropriate. So I recommend that you follow her. She has really nice posts when it comes to these things, and definitely very encouraging to see and to hear how someone you know, who helped create that company, which is very successful in the weapon arts world, you know, she didn't have this sort of ideal path onto becoming a games developer. You know, it took a lot of steps, and it was surely a very difficult path. But she made it in the end, and that's what really matters, you know. And that's what you want to be thinking. Like 5 years from here, I might have to not do exactly what I want right now, but this is something that I'm building up for 5 years to from today.
so
yeah, and
yeah, go
Javier,
ahead.
Javier said like you're looking at all these successful artists, and everyone is like congratulating them on their work and stuff, but you don't know what they have to go through to get there to that level, and you shouldn't be ashamed that you took let's say a low paying job or a job that's not that good just to get to where you started. So I'm gonna give a small example with myself. One of my first, well, my first ever gig was a person from my city hired me to make a small animation in Blender for like it was one of those alphabet trains that they put on kids TV. So he wanted like one of his own to put on a kids TV program, and he basically hired me to make a small animation of that in Blender, and he was paying me something like 50 euros a month for like 4 or 5 months. So it's basically nothing. But I was so hyped that somebody actually was willing to spend money on me making something in 3D that I didn't really care. I was like super nervous for myself to make it right, and that someone actually acknowledged my desire to be in there. So I wasn't making any money, like 50 euros a month. It's nothing, but I was still like beginning university, and this was like a huge motivation for me to continue pushing. Someone saw a potential in me, which means that someone believed in me, and I should continue doing in that path. And you shouldn't belittle yourself on how you started. Just have that goal in mind, and you know that in 5 years you're gonna be there for sure.
Yeah.
So
And
one thing that
sorry, and I think that something
sorry,
super
go
particular
ahead.
is that many people or students, when they think about getting a job, they think about what I can do better for my applications, what I can do better for my artists. Why are they not answering my my applications and so on? Because people tend to think a lot about, I need to be a better fit for the job I want to have, instead of thinking on, I need to do a better work on myself. And that's, I think it's a really important point because when, as you said in the last podcast, Javi, when you start doing the things you love, you start to do them with more interest, and you start to make them with higher quality. You start them to doing better. You start to do it with more interest in them. So you start to produce even better on what you do. And that's when you start to build a really nice portfolio, a really nice set of skills that can show to recruiters or artists, senior artists that are trying to find someone new for their team, that they say, okay, so this guy is worth it. We can take a chance on getting this guy because he has the will and the guts to do the things he loves. Yes, regarding what's about to come in the future. So I have this quote that I can't get tired of saying this. I love this quote from a guy that, well, Javi has heard from me a lot of times. This is Alex, and he always says the real difference between someone that can accomplish what he wants to do in the future and someone who doesn't accomplish is that the one who accomplished will do all the work he can do in the present without having any immediate reward, knowing that in the future it will pay off. Yes, so my case, and I think it's the same case for you, Nick, because I remember that we were hand to hand at a certain moment where we were both trying to get inside, let's say the big game industry, is that we were working a lot in ourselves, in our projects, without having anyone pay us for the amount of quality or job or hours we spend of that. For my case, for example, I spent for my first material, I spent 6 months in one single material. And after that, I didn't get any kind of job. I didn't get any kind of job after half a year later. So I had to work for 1 year, yes, every single day from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the night, yes, to build something it was good enough to get a job. So again, I would try to focus on where I'm standing right now in my set of skills, yes, in order to get a job and try to make the best out of it. Don't try to become the right the right how do you call, the right prospect for the job you want to apply, try to become the best artist you want to become, and the job will come by itself. That's my take on this side as well. But as well, you were going to say something, Javi.
Yeah, no, I mean it was about comparisons. We were like, there was just a hint before about comparing yourself with other people's works and situations, and um that will always be unfair to you, because people people tend to only show you the good side of them, the good side of their stories. And when you compare your realistic situation, which includes the good and the bad, to the situation of someone else who is only speaking and sharing the good things, the good sides of the stories, you're gonna be unfair with your comparisons. So and that's gonna be very discouraging, because it's idealism versus reality. And for a good rule of thumb for me is that for every success someone has, I tend to think, yes, okay, this person has been very successful, but I understand that for every success they've gone through 100 failures. So you should always think about this way, you know, that this person's portfolio, yeah, that's great, they do a lot of work. We were talking about before how people, they do their work in the day, they come back home, and then they work on their portfolio, and that's great, that might work for them. And but again, if I compare that with my situation, with good and bad, i have I have many circumstances for which I can't just come back home and work on my portfolio. So again, I'm comparing myself with that person um unfairly. So I think, yeah, you need to make sure that when you need to make sure you're not comparing your situation to someone else's situation, first of all. But to get, like, if you want to take something as a role model, you also need to do this carefully and understand that that person is a person, not a superhero, and they have had to go through a lot of issues and a lot of problems that they might not be sharing with you, and that's going to generate a discrepancy between their reality and your reality. So when something doesn't work out, that's normal. It didn't work out for them as well. You know, when something goes wrong, that's normal. It probably went wrong for them as well at some point. And if you keep this in mind, you're going to understand that the same way they got to the point where they got is how you're going to get to the point that like, not how, sorry, but is a good enough reason to believe that if you want to, you're going to get to that point. You're not going to live the same life someone else lives, but if they can do it, you can do it, is what I'm trying to say. If you do that comparison appropriately, thinking that they also have a negative side in their lives,
Yeah,
something that
everyone.
isn't as good as everything else.
Yeah, everyone has like problems in their life, and everyone has its own life. It's completely different one to each other. The thing is that you need to between. It's not comparing what you have to do, as Javi says. You need to look for what they are doing that work for them. Then you try it out,
Inspire.
and yeah, inspiring what they do. And it might work out for you, as it may not work out. And if it doesn't work out, that's all right. And I wrote this the other day in one of my posts. If you did something and it didn't work, that's all right. Now you've learned what it doesn't work, so you can keep pushing to something that may work in the future. Yeah. So don't worry too much about it, and as long as you're still trying, you're gonna get there. There's no, I mean, someone that moves forward compared to someone who doesn't move from where they are, it's completely different. Like, the one who's moving forward, it might take him a lot of time, but he will get there. But the person who's not moving will never get there, because he's not moving at all. And you are going to say something, Niki?
Yeah, just to add to that, with the comparison, I see a lot of students being very worried about comparing themselves to somebody else. For example, somebody asked me, well, this person is posting every 2 weeks. I have to work 6 months for an environment. I'm not good enough. They're posting like 10 things in a few months. Well, first of all, that person is only doing that, and you have some free time that you're actually having real life experience and enjoying life. So that's also important. You can't only be doing that. Like, it's important to work on your portfolio, but you shouldn't always be doing that, and you shouldn't always be comparing to that person. And the other thing that they don't realize is, for example, this year I haven't posted anything on Last Station, but once I'm finished with my projects and with my NDAs and stuff, I'm gonna have like 20 different things to post at the end of the year, and I'm gonna post them one thing each week, and people are still going to think, oh, he's been working so much and crunching and doing. No, I've been like not posting for a whole year, and then I'm gonna post my NDA stuff. And
Sorry,
students
Nick.
don't really
Can I interrupt you
realize that.
for
It's all good.
a second?
Let him finish. Let him
Okay,
finish.
okay.
It's all good.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
yes.
I'll say,
No, that's okay. Sorry.
Yeah. The students don't really realize that they're not comparing themselves to someone who's working the same amount of them, or they don't realize that you have a backlog of stuff to post and you just can't post it at this time and time right now. So they always think that they have to be pushing this amount of content out on their portfolio, where they don't really. They just need quality, and that quality will shine after they put all the work in.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I wanted to interrupt you because Javi sent me a message. He needs to leave. So Javi, thanks for coming today. Nick, we can, if you want, we can keep
Always.
pushing. There's a problem. But I'll see you in the next podcast, Javi. As you know, you're always invited here.
Sounds good, man. Thank you always for having me, and it was great to meet you, Niki.
Yeah,
Definitely very interesting topics, and I hope we can meet again in this podcast with another set of questions, because I'm really enjoying and really agreeing with what you're saying. Pretty much, I've been quiet for a while now, especially with I think it was the question with how you enjoy games nowadays. I was just gonna say the same thing with my own words. So yeah, definitely enjoying very much speaking with you and getting to know you. So I hope we speak soon. And thanks, Ezequiel, always for bringing me here.
You're welcome,
And I'll
guys.
be seeing
I
you
have to
around.
work out in that, pre-podcast warm-up where we get to know each other before jumping, because it does
Yeah.
it took us at least 40 minutes until we actually start to kind of develop
Yeah.
everything. And today was a day where I kind of got everything a little bit warm with ease. I was like, I got some breakfast and sit down and watch a series before starting to work, actually. So it was a really quiet day for me today. I'm kind of at ease. So
I enjoyed
again,
it very much. Anyways,
perfect. I'm glad that you did, Javi.
all right.
So thanks for coming,
Have
Javi.
a good day, guys.
Have a great day, Javi.
Bye bye.
See you. So it's you and me now, Nick. So if you want, I have an extra question that go back to the main topic that we were talking about before. Do you still have time?
Let's do a few more questions. Yeah, let's do a few more questions and then park it.
Okay, perfect. So I think this is a specific question that everyone is gonna go through when they join a job. And I think as you grow up as an artist and you move from one position to another, it's gonna be changing your answer because you feel different. But when you were a junior or even a mid artist, and it doesn't matter in which studio you might have been, if it was your first job or your second job, did you ever go over a complicated situation with another coworker, kind of like a disagreement? And did your role or your position in that studio, like being a junior or a mid, had influence on how you approach it? Because I know it's hard when you're a junior to stand up for yourself because you feel like you don't have that much power,
Yeah, that's definitely a problem, and I do have similar experiences. So I'm not gonna talk that much about my first couple of jobs because those were quite chaotic, and you didn't have that many people in different roles for that to be a problem in that sorts. But in Frontier, because of my previous experience, I managed to join as a mid. But still, even now, I'm still a mid, and sometimes that can be a problem, because some people, like senior leads, principals, can really kind of, I wouldn't say think lowly of you, but maybe just underestimate you. And I've been in a position where I've been working on some shaders and some stuff, and I know that my shaders are working, and then one of the junior artists comes to me and says that my shader is not working and that he can do it in a better way and stuff like that, and I'm not agreeing with that, because as a material artist and part of the tech art team, my job is to work on shaders and do that correctly, and the artist's job is to use those shaders. And when I told him that he can do it in another way and that my shader is working, he kind of got me in a call with his lead and asked me the same questions in front of his lead. And I got really annoyed because of it, and that his lead was kind of speaking down on me because of his like position in power, I would say. But in that case, I knew that that my lead will have my back, because he was understands that this is the correct way that I've done it, and that he would have my back. And I just told him that I don't want to deal with them at this point, and that they should learn that how these shaders work. And at that moment, they spoke with my lead, and my lead told them the same thing. So definitely, it really helps when you have someone to back you up and have your back. But when those hierarchies in the studios will definitely play a role sometimes. Sometimes they can really underestimate you, or not having your opinion taken seriously just because you're maybe a junior or a mid, or just lower than them in general. So that is annoying, and you should always try to have someone that has your back, and no matter what, and that way you can always have a little bit of protection. But it's something that happens, and you can't really kind of prevent it, because it's human nature. When you get a little bit of power, some people will always try to kind of exploit it, I would say.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, in my case, I remember when I joined my first job, I was a junior, there was a senior, and then was my lead. And my lead told the just made senior to help me with a task we had to do, and I was going to do it in Designer. And the senior had basically almost nothing of experience in Substance Designer, but she was really good at texturing in Painter. So she knew about textures, but she didn't know about, the technical aspect of Substance Designer. So what happened in that case is that while I was, kind of making the task, yes, we came to a point where I said I didn't know what to show and what not to show. It was like, should I finish the overall thing, or should I show just this first part and make sure that this is all right, and then go to the next step? Like, I wanted to show her the height and normal map with the ambient occlusion first, see if that kind of like modeling inside Substance Designer was really good, and if it was good, I was going to jump to base color, and from them to roughness. And when I showed her, she just came to me and said, but this is not even finished. I mean, you haven't done the base color, you haven't done this, and this. And I was like, yeah, I wanted to show you this first, because if I don't do this part right, then the base color would have a lot of problems, because I wouldn't have done this first part well. Like what I'm used to think about Substance Designer is that you are making a composition of nodes. If there's a problem you don't solve before, then that problem is going to present several times in the future of your workflow, And she kind of didn't got that, and then she started to tell me how to work with Designer. And I usually don't have a problem when they have someone kind of telling me, hey, you can do it in this way, but she was kind of arrogant, and at the same time, what she did was like it was not good. Like I could see the height map, just by seeing the height map, you could realize that the information was not mixing well. There were some really bad shapes being formed, you know, and the result was not good enough. And at that moment, I didn't know what to do. And instead of, you know, going with my lead, I just decided to, you know, just follow her lead, you know, instead of actually confronting the situation, because I didn't want to have any kind of problem, you know. I just joined the studio, first task with the senior. I didn't want to make kind of like a show, you know, from it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's very important to kind of judge the situation and know how to
handle it.
Even if you're right, sometimes you have to kind of swallow your pride and agree with the other person just so everything goes smoothly, because it's more important for the team to work nicely and smoothly than it is for the stuff to be correct. In an ideal world, both of the stuff will be fine, but sometimes you have to adjust with that. So
the thing is,
I think the most importantly is just handle everything with respect and kindness. Don't try to argue, and don't try to be a dick about it just because it's not gonna help you anyways. So be nice and respectful, and if it's not gonna work out now, it's gonna work out in the next time you guys communicate.
Yeah, so, in fact, the next at that time in that specific job it didn't work, but in the next tasks we have together, it worked out fine. Like we kind of understand better each other, and we understood how to communicate with each other and how each of us work. So basically, yes, we kind of got a hunch in there. We didn't have the best relationship, but we kind of got it well for the next one. So
for example, in the beginning when I joined Frontier, like my current lead wasn't really happy with me, because like when I joined in, I wasn't really aware of how stuff worked in a big studio. And for example, I started doing a material, and each time I made progress, I sent him a few pictures for him to see, and he was under the impression that I was sending like finished materials, and he was very unhappy with the quality. And I was just sending like just progress from where I am now to like where I'm going to. And apparently that we weren't on the same page. So it's very important for you guys to be on the same page, so you don't get miscommunication.
Yeah, it happens a lot, and it's really nice when you get to a point where you have a really nice communication with your team and your superiors, because it makes it so easier to work in that case, you know, being able to be able to say, hey, I really don't understand what you're trying to tell me. I don't understand the direction. Can you rephrase it in another way? That's really important to say and to be able to transmit, but we can't always say that, because sometimes, you know, personal lives, you might be having a bad day, or you might be worried about something else, so maybe that kind of, you know, answer doesn't come out from yourself. Now, when it comes to, you know, the role of being a junior, I think that we already talked at the beginning about this subject a little bit, but I wanted to be a little more specific, and this is the last question. How were you able to overcome your insecurity as a junior? Because I feel that every junior has insecurities when they start, you know, their first job. What was a way you achieved to, you know, to overcome that thought that was, let's say, not real? It was just like something you were making up in your head.
To be honest, like the imposter syndrome like never leaves you. Like you're always gonna be with it. Like my lead has also told me this, and he has like 30 years of experience. Like no matter how good you are, you're always gonna have a little bit of doubt in yourself for that. I think just doing a good job and people around you being happy with what you're producing is, I think, a way for you to kind of keep that little voice at bay, just so you can be confident in yourself. And always approach everything with confidence. Like when somebody gives you a task that you haven't done before, like let's say somebody gives me a material surface that I've never approached, like approach it with confidence. If you don't know how to do it, just figure it out. Like you be confident in yourself that you can figure it out. It's maybe gonna take more time than the other materials you've done before, but like nobody's gonna be really mad at you that you're being slow at one material when you've been faster the last 10. So just try to approach everything with confidence, and the moment you start producing good work and people around you are happy with that, it's gonna get better.
Yeah, that's true. It is true. Having the same situation on my current job. I was doing a lot of materials for Emil, and I was doing really good and really fast. And when I started to do slower because I found more hard, more complex materials, I started to kind of like rush what I was doing. So sometimes I deliver things that weren't really good, and he told me, "Hey, don't worry about how much it takes you. Yes, I'll let you know if you're taking too much or if there's any kind of problems, but you're doing great. Just take your time and prioritize quality over time." And those kinds of messages are really good to have, especially if you're working on a team, you know.
Especially like if you have a big team and you get stuck at something, you can always call one of your teammates and just ask them, "Hey, I'm stuck here. How can I do this so it works?" And you can have this conversation back and forth and exchange FBS files and figure it out. So that's another thing you can do. Or for example, if you get stuck in one material and you really can't progress, and if it's not a priority material, you can kind of start working on another one and then come back to this one. Because like if you really get stuck, sometimes it can kind of affect you negatively. For example, I've done so many materials. I know I'm good at designer. I know I can do it. I've done the last 2 months. I've done like, let's say, like 50 materials, and then I get stuck in one material for like 4 days, and I start thinking, oh, I've lost my knowledge in design. What am I doing like here? And it really kind of affects me negatively. Like I feel like crap at the end of the day that I wasn't able to do it. But sometimes stuff like that happens, and you shouldn't let it get in the way. So
yeah, sometimes it's just about you're having a rough day, you're not having a good day, or maybe you're just tired, you know. Yesterday, in fact, I had something like that. I worked all day on the studio, then I had to work on other aspects of, you know, the community, and there's something else I'm building with Kai for the community as well, where we're building a lot of tutorials for the community. And I had to sit down and work on a brick wall that I had done before, but it has some different aspects. And I was trying to make those different aspects, and I was getting so frustrated because I wasn't able to achieve them, you know. And I remember that the day I started that material 3 weeks ago, for me it was so easy to make, and I was starting to get frustrated. And then I thought about, hey, today you have done a lot, you have lost a lot of energy. Don't worry, maybe today you're not being able to finish it, but who knows, maybe during the weekend you're going to be able to do it as well.
Oh, the other thing that sometimes happens, which sometimes isn't as good of a thing, but when you're working from home and when you have access to your work computer, for example. So let's say I've been stuck on something for quite a while, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what to do, and I just like in the middle of the day, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take a big break. I can't work right now. I'm just like frightened. And at night, I'm going to bed like at I don't know, at 11 or something, and I'm just trying to go to sleep, and I'm like, oh, I know how to fix it, and I get up from bed and go fix it, and I can't go back to bed until I fix it. So sometimes I have these moments.
I have a board, you know, on my wall behind the computer. Sometimes before going to sleep, I organize some, you know, things and future projects for the community or for my artwork. And sometimes I just go to sleep and I'm on the bed, you know, laying down, looking at the roof, and I'm just thinking about the problem. And out of the blue, I have an idea. I just jump off the bed, turn on the light, and start drawing on my board, you know, and writing down everything. Yeah. So it is how our brain works. Sometimes, in order to solve a problem, you need to kind of take a rest. And
you need to step back and look at it with the fresh perspective, for example. And it's the same thing right now because I'm on my second job that it's under NDA that I've told you about. Like, there I have like the opportunity to work whenever I want. I just have like an end deadline, and some days after work I start working. I'm so tired I can't even connect like 5 nodes, and it works, and it's not working. And I just take a break for a few days, and when I come back, like that makes sense now, and I start connecting everything, and it's turning out so good that I didn't even imagine I can do it that good, for example. So yeah. Taking breaks definitely helps.
I was for example, one time I was doing a material, I think was for a job, and I had to do some routes, I think. And I couldn't figure out, I don't know why, because it was something I do all the time, you know, kind of like that crack style root veins. I've done it several, like hundreds of times, and I couldn't figure out why it was not looking how I wanted. So at one moment they said, you know what, F it, let's go have some rest. And I went and I sit on my couch and I started watching a series. I was watching Demon Slayer. And there was a scene where the character, like, they have like a shot where they were focusing on the eyes of the characters, and he was being crushed by someone else, and the veins in his eyes were drawn like super exaggerated. And I was looking at that, and I was like, oh, I know how. I stopped the show and I went back. Okay. So it's sometimes it's good to have, you know, that mid rest in the middle to just recharge some energy, or even get inspired on something and then work.
Speaking of rules, those are very, very interesting to figure out, because like every time I see someone on our station post some rules, it's just like those Soft and Stoke from Daniel Tiger with the vector work on the sales noise, and like every time I see someone do it in a different way, I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. Somebody like figured out like a very fun way to do it. So yeah, that just reminded me of that, because like every time I see rules, it's like, oh, that's from that to that.
Yes.
But yeah.
So I also have to leave now, Niki. Thanks for coming. It was really a really nice session.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mm-hmm. I hope to have more. I'm in the works with other material artists as well to join us. So I usually what I tend to do is I do an interview, as I did with you and with Javier, that it hasn't been posted yet. I do an interview with the artist first. Well, we get to know the artist way more. And after that, I start to do this kind of podcast where I try to get them all together. So do expect for the future to have maybe a podcast with many other material artists where the conversation would be more oriented to our specific roles and many other things. So I'm going to try to see how we can take that, because as it is a podcast, it is something like, I mean, this is recorded, it's being displayed on YouTube. But it's also going to be something for audio only, but that's more for the future. So there are some things that are more visual that we can do, but I don't want to fall back into the traditional, kind of meeting where you have all the artists and we just go to do technical stuff. So I want to see how far we can take this as well. So again, thanks for coming, and I hope to see you again in another of our sessions.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I very much enjoy these kind of talks. So yeah, we'll definitely do more.
Perfect. Thanks, man. I'll see you later. Guys, folks, thanks for coming today. I hope you really enjoyed today's session. And well, I'll see you next Wednesday as well. Remember, every Wednesday, same hour, we're going to have a podcast. If we happen to miss one, that's because maybe we're building something else. And again, if you want to join the community, feel free to ask for the link. I think the link should be in the description, but no, I missed that. So for next time, I'll just add it there. And stay tuned, guys. See you next time.